Welcome everyone to our 29th episode. This is a space where I want you to empower you all to be relationship experts. I'm Kimia Shahzadi, the founder of Love Story. My background is I have a master's in clinical behavioral psychology, specializing in relationships. I've published psychology papers and journals you can read on Google Scholar, and I'm happily married for almost 5 years. My husband is in the room as well. Thanks for being here. My brother is here too, Mr. Magic Man. Thank you for being here. I've helped over 100 people with their relationships. And today is a very special episode that we're having. We have Paulie here with us today. He's in the crowd and he is going to tell us a lot about ADHD, which is really awesome to have insight from someone who has experienced it and just go from their journey from the very beginning and see how it's impacted different levels of his life. And we can all learn so much from that, I'm sure. And a lot of the things that he'll share with us will generalize to other mental health issues as well. And a good thing to just frame our mind before we jump in is mental health issues are a spectrum. So in the book of all the diagnoses the psychologist can diagnose you with, there's like 300, 500 something. We can all experience these symptoms to different degrees and then not experience them sometimes. So there's this stigma out there that once you have something, it's there forever and it's unshakable. And only those people in that category of being diagnosed can only relate to those things. And that's just not true. We all experience some of these symptoms to some extent, depending on where we are on the spectrum. And even, there might be something that happens in our life that we experience some of these things a lot more, and then we go back down the spectrum. So it's not a just us or them thing. This is something that humans can just relate to different degrees, and it can relate to a lot of these mental health diagnoses have so much overlap, and psychologists are having a really hard time in how to figure that out in their own industry because, for example, if someone has health issues, excuse me, if someone has sleep issues, that's such a common thing across so many mental health conditions. I just say that one because it's such a common one. There's a lot of really common ones, even like anxiety, like, feeling anxious, feeling worried, feeling sad. These are all such universal human emotions that we experience. There's so many different aspects of this that we can all relate to. So I really want us to kind of start listening to Paulie's journey and story as just like any other human being. We're hearing their story and kind of approaching it from that lens. And then we can have a chance to ask him questions. I can go through some points at the end. I have one Reddit question for us that we can cover in the hour. But yeah, that's all for me. I'm so excited to bring Paulie on. I see your request. Let me have you come on. Okay. I see your request, but I don't know why I can't accept it. Technical difficulty, guys. Give me a quick moment. Okay, I'm going to cancel the invite and then I'm going to try and invite you back on. Okay, I invited you as co-host. Are you able to see that, Paulie? I might just invite you to speak if it's not inviting you as a co-host. Okay, awesome. I see you as a speaker. Thanks so much for coming up.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I've really enjoyed listening to your spaces the last couple of weeks, and it's been fun to be able to be involved a little bit. I've really enjoyed learning about psychology, and philosophy and things of that nature. And I think part of that's probably because I've wanted to understand myself. I think oftentimes maybe we look to certain things as a way to maybe understand ourselves better. So I'd like to think that I've been able to do that. So I'm hoping I can take myself, out of my comfort zone here, push myself to, do something that I think is important and is, when we push ourselves out of our comfort zone, that's a huge part of growing, So that's been something that I've really wanted to do and tried to do with my life. So, and I do have some friends in the audience, V Foodies, Mimo, E. Good to see you guys. Thank you for popping in. Awesome to see the support. So I just introduced myself real quick. I'm Paulie T. I'm from Massachusetts. I'm 36 years old. I'm a co-founder in an NFT project, but we're obviously not going to get into any of that. That's marbles. I have attention deficit hyperactive disorder, which is, it's not a huge deal when we think of all the things that people deal with in the world in the grand scheme of things. But there are a lot of things that I go through and have gone through that I think a lot of other mental health disorders, problems, can relate to. Part of my disorder is that we struggle with structuring things. So this is actually a big challenge for me. So to start off, I wanted to take a few minutes. I kind of wrote out a little breakdown of some thoughts that I thought were important to maybe get the conversation going. I'll do my best to read it without sounding like I'm reading it. You know, so yeah, I'm just going to kick things off with a little bit of my perspective on kind of how we talk about relationships in general. I think most relation conversations we have regarding relationships usually revolve around a lot of the same concepts. We what we see, what we feel, what we like, and what we don't like in our relationships with other people. Um, Analyzing people and the situations we find ourselves in is it's not just a human ability, but it's a part of our animal instinct, right? It's a form of how we protect ourselves to look out for dangers and discover people's motives. We form like-minded tribes for safety and protection, and we're able to learn from one another, which is a huge part of how we were able as human beings to overcome the food chain, right? We strengthen numbers, forming connections, interacting with each other is really at the basis of our very nature. So it's a fundamental part of who we are and how we can really thrive in life. We focus a lot on what other people bring to the table when we talk about our relationships and the things we see, but I think what really impacts our relationships under the surface is the things that we unconsciously bring to the table. Those things that, those aspects of our lives that sometimes we're not even really aware of. The things that just are part of who we are unconsciously, right? Even when we know we have an issue, there's still so much underneath the surface that we don't really understand. So many things we've learned that we didn't know we learned. To the point where if you're in a relationship and you're having an issue with someone, if you guys don't really work it out, it can become difficult for both of you to really understand how the problem really started, who started it. Things can become really confusing really fast, and it can feel really impossible to pinpoint the real problems in a relationship. We make the mistake, I think, of viewing things like addiction as if they're a person's real problem, when the reality is that addiction and an addict, if you cure an addiction, or cure, we say cure, you don't really cure an addiction. If an addict thinks that they can stop feeding their addiction, that they're going to be all better. And I think we all know that that's not the case. Yeah, an addiction is a coping mechanism that people resort to deal with things inside. And, um, you might not drink. You might be, addictions manifest themselves in many different ways. You can be an overeater. You can be an undereater. You can work out a lot. You can shop. You can hoard. If you do something in excess, there's probably something else going on that you're dealing with, right? And coping mechanisms are learned responses, usually to childhood traumas, whether large or small. On a rational level, I think we all understand how an abuser or an addict can become what they are when they grow up in a troubled home with abuse and addicts and emotionally unstable adults, right? So, what we see when we're young sticks with us, and those lessons we learn are really hard to unlearn. But something I think we don't talk about a lot at all, really, is how certain mental health issues of people who grow up in seemingly healthy families actually work underneath to produce coping mechanisms as well. Defense mechanisms at a young age, and where those things might come from. Right, you're not in an abusive home, you're not in an alcoholic home, but you're still resorting to these sort of coping mechanisms, these unhealthy tendencies to try and deal with some sort of issue that you don't really understand. Right, we have all types of different issues, like the main ones, ADHD, bipolar disorder, borderline personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, PTSD, all these things that are they're different in their own way. They can have similarities, and for the most part, we only know the names. We don't really know what they are. We know the signs, we know the symptoms, and we know how difficult it can be to deal with people who have those. What kind of problems can you develop just from trying to actually deal with it, right? And how do those problems show themselves in ways that actually make having healthy relationships hard, right? That's what this is all about, relationships. And when you're bringing something like this into a relationship, that's naturally going to be a huge challenge, not just for you, but the person that you're trying to have the relationship with, whether it's a friend, family, a partner, you know. So I'd like to take a look at ADHD because that's the one thing that I have. It's the one thing I have an understanding of, and what trying to learn how to cope with having that was like, what really was happening that I did not know I was dealing with until much later in life. And I think the most important relationship we have is the relationship we have with ourself, right? And if you're not going into a relationship with a healthy relationship with yourself, yeah, I don't think you can really count on having a healthy relationship with anyone else. You know what I mean? So, doing the homework, doing the hard work, doing the self-reflecting, the analyzing, the educating of yourself on who you are and what you're dealing with, I think it's going to allow you to be able to enter relationships with a more open and honest approach to the people you're with. You know, if you're not honest with yourself, you're never going to be able to be honest with others. So, um, just a little interesting side. I just wanted to throw this little factoid out there because I was watching the video. Interesting. A report in 2009 found that you are 3 times more likely to be dead by the age of 43 if you have ADHD. That's, yeah, it's a very interesting stat, right? It's a strange one if you don't really think about things, but actually, if you really understand ADHD and similar disorders, it makes a lot of sense. Um, so ADHD, when we think about it, you think about someone who just can't pay attention. They're all over the place. Their brains, like they're talking about this thing and they're talking about the next thing, and they're all over the place, right? And that's definitely part of it. But we don't actually, most people don't really understand what's actually happening on a neurological level of an ADHD brain. ADHD brains are actually wired differently. The frontal lobe and the cerebral cortex are actually not, they are not connected in the way a normal brain does. So it actually struggles learning and processing information. So it takes longer to learn something, and it takes even longer to take what you learn and actually apply it, to use it in real time. So there's a huge disadvantage right there out of the gate as far as learning things. Like me, when I was growing up, I was one of those kids. I didn't learn to tie my shoes for a while. I wore Velcro. I was that kid, and it wasn't all that I couldn't learn it. Part of it was that I just didn't want to learn it, which is the other part of ADHD. Is that ADHD people will tend to focus on things that interest them, because unlike most brains, ADHD brains do not actually regulate their hormones in a normal way. ADHD brains do not produce dopamine and serotonin on regular levels. They actually have to find external stimulus to create dopamine boosts for themselves. So, at a young age, an ADHD child finds that if they're not being stimulated, they become sad, and they start to associate sadness the way we do. With sadness, we want to avoid it. It does not feel good. So we tend to gravitate to things that are very interesting in that moment. And they learn subconsciously to start looking for things to get that little boost, that little bump, right? This is where the addictions come in later in life. It's the same idea. It's the clinginess in relationships, looking for the validations, looking for the cheap thrills, the instant gratifications. The ADHD mind at a young age learns that I need to focus on what I have in front of me and the fun I can have right now. Because if I don't get what's fun now, I'm going to be sad. And out goes the ability to long-term plan, to actually do things that are structured, to build things, because at a very young age you learn I need instant gratification. I need instant gratification, and that need does never goes away. So the medications that ADHD people take actually, they help. If you look at the Ritalins, the Concertas, the ones that you hear of, they actually help regulate those hormones. It's actually the emotions, your hormones, that those medicines are regulating, which allows you to be able to focus on other things because you don't need to find that dopamine shot. Your hormones are being regulated on a normal level, which we're talking about all types of other disorders. Now we're getting into other disorders that are, people have hormone imbalances, bipolar disorder, very, very similar concepts, brains that aren't wired properly, that aren't able to supply itself with the hormones that it needs to operate on a functional level. You're going to, at a young age, develop tendencies to do things very differently from other people, and it's based around your neurological system's need for it's almost like a defense mechanism, right? Your brain instinctively says, this is bad, this is good, I need to go to the good, I need to go to the good, or things are going to be bad. And learning that at a young age, it's super super hard to unlearn those things. Just like it's very hard to unlearn if you grew up in an abusive home or a neglectful home, and at a young age you learned, maybe I don't feel like I am worthy of love, or I learned that this is how people act in the world. We abuse people, we don't trust people. The big lie. Anyone who is a writer who learns about writing scripts, part of writing plots and scripts is having characters in development. And one of the big things they like to use is they call it the big lie. It's the thing that a character believes about the world, this misconception about the world, that through their story, you watch them begin to unlearn it, right? I'm not worthy of love, or Beauty and the Beast. We look at something like that, this beast, oh, I'll never be loved. And through the course of the story, he finds love, and he is transformed. That's like the most common storytelling aspect in Hollywood is that whole aspect of undoing the big lie. Um, so pull out and look at relationships as a whole. If you think about, what am I bringing into this relationship? What is my big lie? What is the thing I'm bringing into this situation that isn't allowing me to give this person my best self? And is what is their big lie? We all have these misguided beliefs about the world, and the beauty of a relationship is it allows us to kind of relearn the world through each other's eyes, through each other's experiences. And if we're closed off to having our big lie disproven, what we're going to end up doing is entering conflict or discussion with each other from a very closed off perspective, right? And until we actually take the time to step aside and evaluate our own big lie, you don't really offer your partner an opportunity to really grow with you. That's something that I had to learn through my relationships. I was very insecure, I was shy, and I learned at a young age that, well, I shouldn't say young, in my late teens in college, I started to realize that, if I actually wanted to get better, I had to do things like this, put yourself in uncomfortable situations, put yourself in a moment where you're really testing yourself and seeing what you're made of. I sang in a band for 5 years. I went to college, and you know, to go back to I developed a bit of a drinking problem in college because of the things that I talked about, having ADHD, and it allowed me to feel comfortable around people, and I got that dopamine shot. And before you know it, you're developing these really unhealthy patterns that you have to undo yourself. And we can make our excuses for our defenses and our coping mechanisms. I think most of us do most of the time. But you know, I had the girl of my dreams that I thought was the one, and I lost her, and it broke me. And I went through a really bad time in my life. And admittedly, you know, there were times where I wondered if I really wanted to live. I think a lot of us have I don't want to assume all of us. Maybe that's just me projecting. We do that. But we all have to look at, are we happy with our life, and what's gone up to that point, and I had to have an honest conversation with myself. And I came to the decision that, I'm not going to do that. I'm at the very least going to, be fair to myself, give this life a legitimate chance, try my best, and see if there's a better life for me than I thought I could have. I've tried to do a lot of things. I've tried to learn a lot of things, and learning about, ADHD, I learned so much more about, things about myself I didn't realize were tied to my disorder. I just thought it meant I couldn't pay attention. I didn't realize how much of my life was really being controlled by this like phantom almost, and learning about it, there was, at first it felt terrible, like, oh no, this is never going to get better. Like, this is how it's always going to be. Um, but then as I took time to learn about it, I started to think, okay, well, I'm starting to feel sad right now. Why? I know why my brain feels sad. And I started trying to analyze those things. And I started trying to pull myself out of the moment and be understanding of what I was going through. And it added a whole different feeling to those moments. I felt more in control. I still felt sad, but it was one of those things where it was like, okay, this is gonna pass. This is just my brain being an asshole. I can find some I can find some healthy things. I got to do this, and focus on the good. Wait for those bad things to go. And I've found that in doing so, my relationships with others has really improved a lot. Because when you allow yourself to be honest with yourself and open with yourself and have honest conversations, you open yourself up to doing the same thing with other people. And when you try to show yourself compassion, it allows you to see the world through a more compassionate lens of what other people are experiencing, and understanding that, what, I don't agree with that person and their opinion, but that doesn't mean they're bad, right? It doesn't mean they're the bad guy. It just means we're looking at things from a different point of view. And 9 times out of 10, if you talk to that person and you really have an honest, calm conversation, you'll find you share much more in common than you think. It's just a matter of just that little angle that you're looking at something from a different point of view, you know? And it really, I found it's changed so much about my perspective on myself, about the world, about, removing this whole idea like I'm a failure and I'm not lovable and I'll never have the one. It's like, no, I can. I just need to make sure that I'm putting out what can be someone else's one. Like we can't just say I'm a good person and I'm trying and think that that's good enough because it's not. So um, I think I think really being honest with ourselves is super important. It's very easy for us to focus on the other person and how their actions are affecting me. But when we try and look inside and understand why what that person does is affecting us, I think it allows us to remove some of the the negative intentions we might think they have, and realize that maybe it's just a matter of not understanding where each other's coming from, you know. Um, and that's kind of why I pushed, I asked to do this show, this space, because I think uh, more times than not we're going to focus on the external, right? But being able to have this discussion about the internal, I think, is more important. I got to be honest. I really do. That's just how I feel. And I think I'm excited about the future for myself. I know some of my friends here in the room are buddies with me. I love seeing all my friends pop in. This is phenomenal. I found a community in VChain that it's offered me something really special, and it took me putting myself out there and finding those people to do it. Right. So I guess what I'd like to say is, if you're struggling, if you're having issues with your relationships, if you can take the time to look inside and really be honest with yourself and make sure that you're not putting yourself in environments that are not good for you, to find environments and social groups and support systems that are in line with your beliefs and your values, you're going to thrive. You are going to thrive. You're going to do much better than you ever thought you could. Everyone in this room is capable of amazing things. It's just a matter of putting yourself in a position to be able to shine, you know? Um, and the hard truths, looking inside, is the best way to kickstart that move. Uh, I think I'm going to end with a quote I wrote. Hang on. I love doing inspirational quotes. It's my thing. It's my ADHD thing, the dopamine shots. I know. I'm very aware of it. Um, where is it? Ooh, yes. All right. This is how I'm going to end. When you work on your physical health, the world notices. When you work on your mental health, the universe notices.
Oh, Polly, that's a great one. Wow, wow. What an amazing, amazing time we've had just listening to all of the really wise things that you've shared to us. Everyone, please show in your reactions how you felt about Paulie's amazing words and story that he shared with us. It was really moving and touching, and I think every single one of us took something different away from what you said. From we took what we needed to hear from it to really improve our lives. And I really applaud your bravery to come up today and share everything that you did. We need more and more of these honest conversations with each other transparently, so we can all realize that, we're all a little crazy and it's okay. And we're going to talk about it honestly, and we're going to talk about it honestly with ourselves. And a lot of the things that Paulie mentioned, like we can relate to. It's not something like completely alien to us that we can't understand. For example, you wanting to end with a quote, that's a beautiful thing. There's a bunch of people that would love to end with a beautiful quote. So that's amazing. I have a question in mind, but I want to reserve that and just give the floor to anyone else who has a question first before I ask my question. So if anyone's got a burning question in their mind, just put your hand up or request to speak or unmute yourself. Or if there's anything you'd like to say to Polly, this would be a great time to say it.
I know it's tough. I sang in a band for 5 years, right? I remember the first time I was up on stage. Oh, we got Omid coming up. That's awesome. First time I was on stage, I was practically turned away from the crowd. Like I was a statue. I couldn't even look out at the crowd. I was so nervous. But every time I got on that stage, it got a little easier. And putting yourself out there, public speaking, they say is the hardest thing for people to do. You know, but I think it's important to. I officiated my sister's wedding. I'd never done that. My sister's like, "You want to officiate my wedding?" I'm like, "Sure, why not?" I just went. I bought like I went online. I paid $100 for this freaking thing, and I literally like officiated their wedding, and the whole family loved it. Like it's just I don't know why. I feel like when we allow ourselves to push our boundaries, we grow. Like that's the only way we can grow, right? And if we try to stay comfortable all the time, we're not living. If you live the most comfortable life, are you really living? I don't know. I wouldn't say so. So please, if anyone has anything they'd like to say or ask, if you want to come up and call me a freaking nut job, please, like, I would love to hear it. Or if you just want to touch on something of your own experience, or a question about something else, like that would be awesome.
My question for you, if you can hear me, I don't know if you can.
I can, yes,
Um,
yes.
cool. Where did you find the inner strength, and where did you find, like, how did you find the community that supported you through your trials and your life the most?
Ooh, that's a great question, and it's a very long, long answer, but I'll try to boil it down as much as I can. So, since we're being honest, I'll tell you a little story. I don't know if anyone in the room has ever done psilocybin mushrooms before. Show of hands. Wacky mushrooms. Yeah. So I went through a phase where I did, and uh, let's just say I was not having a good time on this particular evening. It was not a good time. Um, to the point where I was having really terrible feelings, like super depressed, just feeling like absolute shit, right? Um, and there was no escaping it. There was no getting away from these feelings, and I knew it in that moment. So I made a decision, and I shut everything off, shut the lights off, and I just laid down in my bedroom, and I just felt it. I just allowed all those feelings to just, it was as if I became my pain. Like all I saw was just terrible things. Like I was seeing visions of terrible things. And it was just one of those things where I was like, this is my punishment. Take it. I'm just going to take it. And I had I started like having these weird spasms, and my back started arching. It was really bizarre. I was like writhing. And I went through these cycles where I'd start writhing and doing these weird motions, and I'd feel these pain, and I'd like, you know what, fuck this, f this, and it was like I threw the pain away, right? And it came back a few times, and eventually I like I was like, no, I'm done. And about the fourth time, I basically curled up in the fetal position on my recliner, and I saw in my mind's eye, because it was dark, I saw like these golden scales. Like it was almost as if they were like in front of my eyelids, behind my eyelids, but between my eyelids and my eyes. And it was like these golden scales. And this, like, it looked to be like a dragon's head came into my mind's eye. And it was this golden dragon, like the serpent. And it was just like we were staring at each other. And I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, okay, I'm on drugs. So obviously this isn't real. You know what I mean? But something in my head is happening right now. Like I'm experiencing something, and it was so cathartic for me, and so like it's hard to explain what I felt in that moment. Um, and it was after that moment where I really actually started allowing myself to um maybe treat my feelings as I did in that night, where I wasn't going to let my pain define me. I was going to accept it and understand that I control what I have to do. I'm in control of my happiness, right? And I still had a lot of issues after that day, but I very much feel that that moment was a real moment of growth. And it took a lot more moments after to get where I am now. But I think when we allow ourselves to feel our pain, and just own it, just own what we got going on. It's not something that we need to be ashamed of. It's just a part of our human experience, right? And pain is an opportunity for growth. Pain is an opportunity for learning. Pain is an opportunity to, you know, remember and think about the beautiful things we've had. You know, realize that there's a lot in this world to be look forward to and be thankful for, and those things get reinforced by the loss and the pain that we feel. So, um, you know, my ADHD brain. I'm sorry, like I know I ramble a
Oh,
little all over the place. This is how my
beautiful.
brain
That
works.
was beautiful. Well
I,
said,
I
Mr. Paul.
appreciate. I'm glad you appreciate it. Yeah, it's been a long. I'm 36. Like I'm not an old man, but I've done some stuff. Just like everyone in this room, we've
Yeah,
all had our own experiences.
yeah. Let me try to like fill in some gaps for you there, if you don't
Sure.
mind,
Yeah.
Miss
Yeah. No,
Unicorn.
please. Yeah.
Yeah. So, let me start from the back. Yes, I sometimes say to people like embrace the pain, harness the pain. Pain is probably one of the strongest things you'll feel in your lifetime, even if you're joyous most of the time. When you have pain, that'll be like a severe, significant thing, emotionally, physically. Like there's a reason for that. It's super powerful. Like when you're in pain, your mind, your body, everything gets stronger, right? So what happened to you, and please correct me, Miss Unicorn Lady, but this is my feeling on what you went through. You became vulnerable during your psycho stuff experience with the drugs, and you took responsibility for your own weaknesses, flaws, whatever it is, and they're not your fault, obviously. It's just whatever, but you took responsibility for them too. You became vulnerable to them, you accepted them, and then the wall of fire that you felt, you acknowledge that if you walked through that fire, you could get to the other side, and then you did, and you're like, well, I can do this again. So whatever happens, you can deal with it. Now we're gonna keep going back. So the mushrooms, the psilocybin, the psychoactives, uh, specifically mushrooms and LSD, what they do, and please again correct me, science people, but they remove your ability to disassociate things. Like when you're a typical normal person, you disassociate sounds and cracks and creaks and lights and whatever to focus on your task and survive and feed yourself. When you're on those psychoactive drugs, specifically those two, you don't disassociate anything. So you take everything in. It's overwhelming to your brain. So that's the load you feel of stimulants, and then I'm pretty sure it stimulates the dream chemical, whatever that's called. So it makes you a little bit floaty and sort of vulnerable in general. So, and I'm not by any means promoting that kind of stuff at all. I've tried it. Microdosing psilocybin has become very popular, kind of a hipster thing in recent years. I think that's pretty safe. I've tried the microdose things. They're very, very mild. But again, I'm not promoting that, obviously. But becoming vulnerable and like cornered a bit in that situation when your brain was going crazy, you were a little bit, defensive and vulnerable, confronted you with your stuff and you accepted it and moved forward. So that was the win, right? That's how I feel about what you said.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. I think that's a great perspective and thought about it. And I agree. I'm not going to go around saying everyone should go do mushrooms. You know what I mean? Like I think a big part of what I tried to talk about today was, we coping mechanisms don't fix anything, right? Like the reason that was able to help me was because at the end of the day, I actually faced it. Even though I might have been under the influence of something, I still
Yeah,
at my
maybe you
core
were
faced it.
forced to face it, but still you faced it, and that's how
Sure,
you.
sure. Yeah, yeah. So I think your perspective on it's great. I think it's spot on. And I know we've moved a little away from relationships in general, but like I said, I think the most important relationship we have is with ourselves. And if that's not healthy, then no other relationship is. And I can say, I know that I've grown because I still have the very shy, reserved relationship I have with my family that I did when I was younger. I go to my parents' house and I still act that same way. And then I leave and I'm around other people and I'm like a whole different person. And it's like, wow, this is who I've become. Now my step is trying to become that with my family and
I
like
think
the
it's a
people,
confidence thing, right? Like you build confidence, and then you can push that into the areas where you're less confident, right? I think,
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. And
But
when you
is it bad to have two different is it are you a psychopath or whatever, or
no, no,
not? Like
no,
I think
it's
it's okay
yeah.
to vary your relationship, personality a little bit.
Well, I think it's more of a quietness. I think when you grow up in a home and you learn to be a certain way, it's very difficult to unlearn how to be that around those same people, right? I think that's why you see people maybe move away, start a new life, find new groups.
Make
It's
a new family,
really,
whatever. Yeah,
yeah,
totally. Yeah.
it's really hard to unlearn those dynamics once they're a part of that, especially when you have multiple people involved, because it's not just you. Like now this whole dynamic is you and other people. Now it brings it to a whole different level. So that's definitely something that's on my list to try and I've gotten better at it. I've got a niece and a nephew that I'm able to show a lot of love to, and I've tried to have a more a more healthy
It's like a
relationship.
fresh start. start, right? It's like a new
Yeah,
person, so no
yeah,
baggage.
exactly. It makes it much easier when they're little and you don't have that baggage attached to it. Yeah, I love being an uncle, and um, I know I'd like to be a dad one day, but I think the self-improvement I knew I knew was something I had to do. I wasn't going to be a dad without feeling like I was in a good place to be one. I don't think it's fair to the kids. I don't think it's fair to your partner. I don't think it's fair to the world. We got a lot of people running around, a lot of people who were raised wrong that are doing a lot of crazy stuff. And, we don't, I don't want to be someone who brings, who contributes to that. So, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing, both of you, Polly, Houdini.
Yeah. Thank you, Houdini.
Of course. Omid, was your initial question answered? Did you want to respond to how he answered the question?
I feel like the first half of my question, Paul
Yeah.
answered,
Yeah.
but the second half of my question was completely ignored.
Oh, yep. The second part, I think, from memory was, so once you had this epiphany, and then how did you go from kind of facing everything to finding the good people around you that kind of helped you thrive and flourish? I think some of the people were
yes.
VChain. How did you just transition from that low point, facing it all, and then that next point of finding the people around you?
Well,
He was a new man. Sorry, Paul. Let me speak for you for just a split second. You were a new person, like a new confident person. You had gone through the fire. Like that's how I assume. But you go say your thing. Sorry.
yeah, no. So, I'm a bit of a spiritual person. I'm not going to say I'm super religious, but I believe that the universe is a single entity where we have there is a consciousness, whether it's all of our consciousnesses that are connected unconsciously, or if there's a God, whatever you guys want to name it. I think we all are kind of
We have an energy. We have a shared energy of something.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I think the universe, I think in a karmic universe, and I think that the universe sends us things when we're ready for them. Uh, and it sends us things when maybe we're not ready for them too. But if it does, we don't keep it, right? I have noticed in the last few years that opportunities have just come out of seemingly nowhere. Um, I actually got into VChain because one of my coworkers was in it, and he talked to me, and he was my only coworker friend, really. Like, he's the one dude that I got along with, and he was in VChain. So I was like, it sounds stupid. I don't know what crypto or NFTs are. What are you talking about, dude?
Bunch
Like,
of
but
chat pauses.
yeah, dude, I'm like, dude, it's fucking stupid. But I eventually I caved and I checked it out, and I kind of got hooked. Like, I really fell in love with the community. I thought it was really cool. It was a different vibe from anything I'd ever been involved in. Like, I'd done sports growing up, but sports, you got that kind of like that masculine machismo. We bust each other's balls, shit, and I'm 36. I'm over that. I actually am a person who enjoys deep conversations like we're having now. I like meaningful conversation, and supporting people, and I think there's a strength in that as well. And over time, I was just able to discover more of my voice in the community, and I started being able to contribute more. Um, and like at NFT Las Vegas, I was just there. I paid $2,000 to go out to this NFT Las Vegas event. And I got to meet my buddy, one little dude down there. Appreciate you, buddy. We had a great time. I got to meet, you know, the love story guru herself.
Oh my
It was
goodness! You
it
met
was
the
phenomenal.
Oh my.
Yeah, I got to meet her. We had a great conversation. I met so many awesome people, and um, actually being there was probably the second most impactful moment besides my experience in my room that night. Because when I got there, I actually was able to meet people I had talked to for a couple years, and I was actually able to start showing them what I could do, and I was actually able to start contributing to this ecosystem and this community in a positive and impactful way. And I was getting amazing feedback from people in the community that I didn't even really know that well. Like, they were looking at me like I was almost like a rock star. You know what I mean? Like, I just went with it, and I just tried to do my thing, and I discovered something in me in that trip that I felt like I was building up to, but I had not had a chance to actually um, experience it and live it and do it, you know. But it took me paying a bunch of money and taking that trip, going out of my way to put myself in that situation. The universe threw that situation at me. I had to take it, and then I went
You
there.
could have ran away. You could have been like nah, and you didn't.
Dude, you don't know what opportunities you have in life that you don't take advantage of that you should have. You know what I mean? So I've come to the point where if I see something like that, I want to take it, and I'm going to go with it. And I've become a team member of a marketplace on BVM. I'm a co-founder of my own project right now. I'm doing this. I'm about to be on a podcast. I'm on
You're
a
talking on
space
some
on
recorded
Sundays.
goddamn
I'm
spaces with
I'm
unicorns,
talking
man.
with you
Yeah.
guys, like having meaningful conversation. I'm telling you, if I could have brought back me from a year ago, 2 years ago, and you told 2 year ago me, this is what you're going to be doing, I would have told you you're insane and to go back to whatever
Yeah.
the hell
Leave
hole
me
you just wrote
alone.
up.
I'm gonna go
Yeah,
back in my dark
you're
closet and hide.
exactly,
Yeah.
dude.
Good for
You
you,
just
man.
don't know. You don't know when those things are going to happen. But if you don't take those steps to be honest with yourself, accept that life can suck, but it can
Be
be a lot better.
vulnerable. Be
Yes,
vulnerable. Yes.
yes, yes. Yeah. So Omid, I don't know if that answers your question. It was because there's been many times, but and it did seem to happen a little by chance. But at the same time, it almost felt like it wasn't by chance. You know what I mean? In a weird way.
Ooh, I'm gonna jump in. I remembered the thing I was gonna say as part of my like whole backstory earlier. Um, the scales that you saw, you were like picturing scales, right? There's a thing. I don't know if you know about this love story, but I think it was Jung, and then it goes back like through to Pluto. But there's like a study where they hypnotize people, and they like the images they see. It's a scale. Basically, it's the sun with a pendulum or a scale or something that hangs off of it, and there's various objects on both sides. But it's like a balance thing, right? Like we're always looking for balance. Like that's the collective unconscious. Like that's the baseline.
Well, it wasn't a scale as in measuring scale. It was like dragon scales. It was like if you were looking at a
Oh,
serpent
not like
scale.
justice, like dragon
No,
scale. So
it was.
you were thinking more like you were going to
I've
war because you had to get through some shit. Like you
yeah.
had to like go to battle. I
Well,
got it.
after I had unleashed it, I saw the dragon and I started researching what that meant. And golden dragons, look up golden dragon. Each color dragon in Eastern mythology, they represent something very different.
Oh, sure. The dragons are huge over there, right? I
Yeah,
don't know what the specifics are, but yeah,
and
makes sense.
it's isn't it interesting that we as human beings throughout history we can visualize similar things and know instinctively that they represent the same thing. It's
What do you like?
interesting, right?
What do you like better, purple or brown?
Um, just in a general sense.
Yeah, if you wanted to paint a picture or pick a color, and you had to pick a color to paint a picture, purple or brown, and you
I,
wanted
I
that
would
color, you want that picture to have value and like look cool.
I would probably go with purple.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so
Yeah.
fundamental things. That's a 15, 20, 30,000 years ago, or 4, depending on your faith. But like that color was really expensive, and
Yeah.
so only royalty had it. Like it's super simple, but we are connected in ways, whether it's spiritual or just physiological. Either way, we're connected.
Mm-hmm. I see Bishop. I think my buddy Bishop's here. What's going
Yeah,
on,
put your
Bishop?
hand down and talk. Your arm must be horribly tired.
No, I saw the topic of the room and I was like, oh, snap. I got to get in there. And then I saw Polly in here and I'm like, oh, man, now I got to request up. No, Polly's been doing some great stuff and I haven't known Polly that long, but he and I have had some really intense conversations via Discord and I feel like I'm getting to know Polly pretty well. And I would like to say that I think he's getting to know me pretty well.
Me too.
But
In like the last 10 minutes. But yeah, he's come through some shit. So stud. Yeah.
oh, man, he has, but one of the things that Polly also realizes is that we're not always given rainbows and butterflies, if you will, when it comes to building relationships. Like, as an example, some of my best friends in this space have been guys that initially I tore them up one side and down the other, reviewing their brand, their project, their whatever.
Yeah.
And they were
Flooded
really,
them, right? And now you're like,
oh, yeah. Well, I mean, it wasn't necessarily FUD per se,
correct.
because
Constructive
but
criticism, but harsh.
right.
Yeah.
Right. Because I call it like I see it. I don't beat around the bush and things like that. But now some of those guys are some of my best friends, because they knew that I was doing it because I did care about them. Even though I didn't know them, I did care about them being as successful as they possibly could be in the space. So relationships don't always come easy, guys. And you have to work for them. I mean, they don't just fall into your lap. You actually have to work for them. And it doesn't matter if it's a relationship with your wife, your husband, your mother, your father, your sons, daughters, brothers, sisters, whatever the case is, they have to be worked for and they have to be mutually beneficial.
Yeah,
They're not just.
there's no guilt in honesty ever.
Nope.
No, it's
Nope.
sometimes hard. There's no guilt. But yeah, go on, Bishop. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I had a couple more quotes relating to this. The
Do
calm
it.
demeanor receives the more favorable results. And specifically tied to that, how we approach an important conversation matters more than the message you want to convey. If you can't approach a conversation in a relationship, whether it's lover or
Yeah.
whoever,
Tone.
and if you don't approach it the right way, you could say all the right things, but they aren't going to hear a damn thing. They're not. they're instinctively going to become defensive, and they're going to look for whatever reason they can to say, yeah, no, I'm good. I don't need what you're saying. Stay away. You know, and that's a part of my journey, what I've had to learn, because I was that guy. You know, I feel like as humans, we learn something and then we want to be like, oh, I know something. I want to tell
Yeah.
everyone. Everyone's got to know what I know.
Yeah.
And
It's easy to say no. You don't have to say it. You can just like not do it, and then you just say, yeah.
And we want everyone to see the world the way we do, because we know, you know, but that's just not a healthy way to operate with others, and it's a really good way to get resentment from others, you know, especially in a relationship. You think about, you know, you have a partner, you guys see each other and talk to each other all the time.
Resentment's
Like,
the whole thing, right? Yeah.
like you can work with someone and get away with little stupid things that they don't like, but when you're around someone all the time, that stuff that builds up real quick, you know. So
I just want to ask something.
You know what I hold on to? I just pitched it in another space the other day, like a totally different, like huge space. But like, Love Story, you said at one point, or someone in your space said, you know, it takes for every one bad interaction, you have to do 2 good interactions.
Five,
Like what
magic
Polly
ratio.
just said. Yeah.
Yes, 1 to 5.
Random. I just want to add to this real quick. Someone said it's not really about what you say in a relationship, but it's like how you say it. It's like how you come at the situation. Yeah, I learned that from an early age. From like that's like, and I'm not saying these are like beacons of like light and how to navigate human interaction, but like even like pimps say that shit. Like they're like, yeah, it's not about what you say to
Exactly.
folks. It's how you do it. It's how your energy is. It's like, how are you coming across? Because if you're coming across all fucked up, it's not going to work out for you. It's not going to work out for either of y'all. So it's very important to
Who knows how to deal with people better than a pimpin' or a hustler? Like, ask them how to like manage people. Exactly.
They say it ain't easy. That's what they say. That's probably the part they're talking about.
Well, they need to know something to keep around.
Talk about ADHD. This conversation is taking an ADHD turn
This
right
is
here.
beautiful.
This is great.
Exactly. We can all embrace it. And I want to just highlight, Paulie, like you have healthy relationships in your life because they're here in the room right now supporting you, and you know you have a healthy enough relationship with yourself and with how you treat people that I wouldn't put you as a co-host to share your story if I didn't think so, and I didn't think a lot of you. So I definitely do, and I think it really shows here tonight with all of the relationships you've built around yourself that are healthy. So I'm super, super proud of you for that. I have a couple of things I just wanted to touch on, and then I'll ask my question too. So one, I want people to realize that, you know, even if you're diagnosed with mental health disorders or anything like that, you know, some people have the willingness to be able to, you know, marry someone that has some, some of these things, and some people don't. And so it's really important that, for example, if something that you feel is something that you deal with that comes up in your daily life or is functional, or, you know, just something like that, you want to be kind of upfront with it. And one of the things, like I've recently created, like, you know, really like psychology systematized way of being able to match people now. And one of the things I do ask them is, you know, what kind of mental health issues are you okay with to deal with? I ask the same question for physical health issues. You know, obviously everyone maybe ideally would prefer someone with perfect physical or mental health, but you know, that's not everybody has it. And so, you know, everybody is lacking in some way. So kind of where people's flexibilities are. And, you know, for some people, they have like the ultimate flexibility. I even came across someone that was like, I prefer someone with mental health issues because then they would understand me better. And then some people really have not much tolerance at all, or they've been burned by someone who's treated them horribly with mental health issues or something like that. And everybody's okay to have their own preference. But honestly, if you share that and be vulnerable, and it's scary to share that up front, but if you do, then you're going to be so much happier in the long run, because then you know someone is able to handle it versus someone who is not, and then you find out later it's horrible.
Yeah, imagine you shared like your deepest, darkest insecurity at, like on like 4th or 5th date, like, and then you could just move on like past that. That'd be amazing.
Yeah.
Bro, I did that. It didn't go past the 4th day.
Yeah, I did there. Well, you knew, right? And then you moved on. You're like, well,
He dodged
shit.
the
Like,
bullet. He dodged the bullet.
I guess it depends how dark it is. That probably is.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest with you, yo.
Like, you just gotta like confront it, right? Like,
I'm gonna be honest with you. No, we ain't gotta confront it like that. Like, nah. If you just dating, nah, we ain't gotta go that far. Like, come on now. It's called tacting. It's time and place. Like,
you gotta find the time. Like, it's not just random at like the movie theater for sure.
like, yo, like imagine she's trying to come on to you and you're just like, oh, yo, before we get into this real quick, let me tell you about how my uncle touched me in my butthole when I was 3 years old. Like, no, that's not the time for that.
Yo,
unless she's into it.
Armand's one contribution today.
Swerve.
Let's take a look.
She may be into it.
If you want like this person forever, like if you're literally thinking they're wife material or husband material, like the quicker you find out if they're the one or not, sharing that story is going to help. If someone can't handle that story, like maybe you don't want them in your life, you know. So the quicker we know that, the better.
Yeah, you got to burn it out, but you're right. You can like pitch it nicely, you know.
You can.
Yeah.
You can. Absolutely. Absolutely agreed.
1
Go ahead.
second. I don't know how to raise my hand. Is there like a button for that?
No, just yell.
There,
Just
go
yell.
ahead. Go ahead.
Just be like, yo.
Yeah.
The heart symbol, if you hit the heart symbol on the bottom, you should go all the way to the right, that hand, that puts your hand
Yeah.
up.
Mhm.
All right.
Right next to it,
I have
right
a few
next-
things I wanted to say, touching back, like jokes aside, a few interesting points. First of all, thanks very much, Polly, for talking. I gained a lot. I think you had a really well-stated set of points. One of the things that I heard mentioned was that having the ratio of positive interactions being above 5 to 1 being really important.
That's
another
bar. I was
part
at
of that
2 to 1 when I brought it up. Sorry to cut you off, but yeah, go on.
Yeah. Another part of that study actually showed that if the number of positive interactions to negative exceeds 11 to 1, that also is like a negative indicator for the relationship to continue.
Oh, it's like fake or like?
No, I think there's probably some component of it being fake, but I bet there's also like, I mean, when you want to have a partner, you don't want to have someone that only agrees with you and never like provides any sort of, you know, meaningful conflict. Like no one is looking for a pushover. People are looking for someone to challenge them and to grow with them. And like, that's something that's really important to keep in mind. Like the fact that that's a straight up statistic, like exceeding 11 to 1 is a negative indicator for relationship health, is like really important actually to keep in mind. And we can talk more about that for sure.
That's tough for a people pleaser to hear. Like I want like 12.
Oh yeah, no,
like,
you just touched. I was about to mention it and tie that back because that was something I wanted to talk about what, you know, as an ADHD person, you know, I learned at a young age that to be a people pleaser. That's what I did. That was, you know what, I'm just going to be the nice guy and people are going to like me. And, you know, and everyone's going to think I'm great. You know what I mean? And that's going to make me feel better about myself. And I'm pretty sure most of us in here are men. And most of us know chicks don't like people pleasers. So
they like confidence and like security and shit like that.
You need to be able to have boundaries, and you need to be able to like establish certain things. You need to show that you're willing to fight, and that you're not just going to try and walk that line where everyone's like good. Like a woman needs to know that her partner is going to make her world safe. You know, and especially if the woman has trust issues, if she has a negative view on society or the world.
Partner, but yes.
Yeah, I'm an anxious. I found I was an anxious attachment type, and the girl that I fell for turns out an avoidant attachment type, and that can be that's a very tricky slope to go down. And touching back to, you know, what we were just talking about communication, and if you can deal with people with certain types of, you know, mental health issues, if both sides are willing to talk and at least try to see from each other's point of view. You know, like if I'm an anxious and the avoidant person says, "Hey, you know what? I'm uncomfortable right now. I just need a little space. Like I'll touch base with you tomorrow." Like you can establish something there, you know, like that. But
that's
when
like
that
devastating to some partners, like I wait till tomorrow. Like
yeah,
let me
so
go
then
jump off a cliff. In the meantime, sure.
But then that's what falls on the other person, right? That's why it's a two-way street. You both have to be willing to meet each other at least part way, you know, like even if it's 30-70, you guys, and you have to establish that this is our comfort zone. And as long as we stay within there, you know, we will treat each other and treat it, you know, because we can't expect people to love us the same way if they're just not built that way, you know? So understanding that everyone doesn't have to love like you. You're not going to love someone into loving you. People are going to do what they've learned to do. And, you know, over loving someone isn't going to change that. If someone learns something at a young age, they have to unlearn it. The only person that can undo the big lie is the person who believes it, right? So you can offer an example that they can feed off of, and maybe in time they can see a different side of the street. But they have to make that choice themselves. And if that, you know, me and my girl, we didn't succeed because she was someone who could not communicate. She refused. In fact, when she was asked to, I actually asked to open a more, you know, open dialogue to help me. You know, I wanted help. I was asking her to help me be better, and she couldn't do that. So basically, I was like, well, I'm set up to fail. I can't succeed here if I'm not getting the feedback that I need as an anxious person, you know, who typically they need a lot of feedback, they need a lot of reassurances. It's obnoxious, I'm sure, but it's just how we are. You know, if we can't get that, at least in some form, then it's just not going to work. You know, and both people are only going to suffer in the long run because of it. So now I am still in the process of getting over that one. but it's gotten easier. It's getting easier. And, when my one comes, I will know. But I'm just focused on doing what I need to do with my life, continuing to grow, continuing to put myself out there, build meaningful relationships, make as many connections with good people as you can, because you can never have too many good relationships. You can't have too many good people in your life. That's the one thing I'll say. And I went a long time without feeling like I had any good relationships in my life. So
Damn.
yeah, yeah. And I know I'm not the only person who's felt like that, and we do our coping mechanisms, and some people don't take the time, or maybe they don't have the opportunity. I've tried to remind myself that I'm very fortunate that I've grown up in a two-parent home. We weren't, poor. I had opportunity. I really don't have a lot to complain about. My problems are me. So it makes it a lot easier to deal with, trying to have that humility and that appreciation for what you do have, and accountability of yourself and your own actions. If you can have those things, I think you can overcome just about anything.
Love that. Bijan, did you have more to your question?
Yeah, it was another point that you guys mentioned earlier about, self-work and the dragon and stuff like that. And if people are down, there's like a whole passage about this called the Three Metamorphoses. And it will be
I
kind of
love that. Nietzsche. Yes,
Yeah.
it's my favorite. That is my favorite. Dude, I'm big into Nietzsche. Yeah,
So
that's the one big one. Love
it's a book called Thus Spake Zarathustra. So on the nose for my Zoroastrians out here, where my Z's at. But I'm down to read a little bit and we can see how we feel about it. But it's kind of I don't know. It's not as interactive. So if people are down, let's do it. If not,
Do you have it?
I have it pulled up on my computer right now.
Yeah, I'm down.
It's a really interesting. I remember reading it after my experience, and because I tried to read a bunch of stuff, and I remember when I read that and I saw the dragon part, it was one of those holy fuck, what I mean? Whoa, yeah. I love it. Go ahead.
All right, I'll get started. So this is a passage called the Three Metamorphoses. The first sentence is, "Three metamorphoses of the spirit do I designate to you, how the spirit becometh a camel, the camel a lion, and the lion at last a child. Many heavy things are there for the spirit, the strong, load-bearing spirit, in which reverence dwelleth. For the heavy and the heaviest longeth its strength. What is heavy? So asketh the load-bearing spirit. Then kneeleth it down like the camel, and wanteth to be well laden. What is the heaviest thing, ye heroes? Asketh the load-bearing spirit, that I may take it upon me, and rejoice in my strength. Is it not this, to humiliate oneself in order to mortify one's pride, to exhibit one's folly in order to mock at one's wisdom? Or is it this, to desert our cause when it celebrateth its triumph, to ascend high mountains to tempt the tempter? Or is it this, to feed on the acorns and grass of knowledge, and for the sake of truth to suffer hunger of soul?" And they go into a few other examples that I'll sort of skip over. "All these heaviest things the load-bearing spirit taketh upon itself, and like the camel, which when laden hasteneth into the wilderness, so hasteneth the spirit into its wilderness. But in the loneliest wilderness happeneth the second metamorphosis. Here the spirit becometh a lion. Freedom will it capture, and lordship in its own wilderness. Its last lord it here seeketh. Hostile will it be to him, and to its last god. For victory will it struggle with the great dragon. What is the great dragon, which the spirit is no longer inclined to call Lord and God? Thou shalt, is the great dragon called. But the spirit of the lion saith, I will. Thou shalt lieth in its path, sparkling with gold a scale-covered beast, and on every scale glittereth golden, thou shalt. The values of 1,000 years glitter on those scales, and thus speaketh the mightiest of all dragons. All the values of things glitter on me. All values have already been created, and all created values do I represent. Verily there shall be no I will any more, thus speaketh the dragon. My brethren, wherefore is the need of the lion in the spirit? Why sufficeth not the beast of burden, which renounceth and is reverent? To create new values that even the lion cannot yet accomplish, but to create itself freedom for new creating, that can the might of the lion do. To create itself freedom and give a holy nay, even unto duty. For that, my brethren, there is need of the lion. To assume the ride to new values, that is the most formidable assumption for a load-bearing and reverent spirit. Verily, unto such a spirit it is praying, and the work of a beast of prey. I'm going to pause for a sec. There's like a paragraph or two about the child, but just to summarize what I read so far, at the beginning, you're a camel, and meaning in your life is how much hardship you can put upon yourself. That makes you important. So the more work you do and the more responsibilities you take on and the more challenges you take on, the more, meaning that you feel, and you're following the, values of the dragon, which is basically like, to some degree, like our society, which tells us what has meaning and what doesn't. And on the dragon are all these golden glittering scales, which is like, I don't know, like the societal values. And the more metamorphosis from the camel to the lion is basically, instead of living for society or living, for others and only following the values of society and others, you try to live in some sense of freedom and freedom of thought to make decisions for yourself and to find your own meaning and your own values. And you have to change your perspective from being a beast of burden that, finds meaning in suffering for the sake of others to actually finding meaning in freedom and discovery. Then the last paragraph or two basically says, but tell me, my brethren, what the child can do, which is the third metamorphosis, which even the lion could not do. Why hath the praying lion still to become a child? Innocence is the child, and forgetfulness, a new beginning, a game, a self-rolling wheel, a first movement, a holy yeah. Aye, for the game of creating, my brethren, there is needed a holy yeah unto life. Its own will willeth now the spirit. His own world winneth the world's outcast. 3 metamorphoses of the spirit have I designated to you. How the spirit became a camel, the camel a lion, and the lion at last a child. Thus spake Zarathustra. And at that time he abode in the town which is called the Pied Cow. That's the passage. Thanks for listening. I know it was a long read.
Oh, that's great. That's the metamorphosis. Who was the writer? I missed part of the beginning.
That's Friedrich Nietzsche.
Nietzsche. That's what
yeah,
it was. Okay,
yeah.
Cool. Thank you. And that's been adapted a bunch of times, like with the caterpillar thing, and yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it gives me goosebumps sometimes when I was listening to it, when you mentioned the golden dragon, because when I read it, I remember thinking that it was as if I was looking at the dragon, like the dragon was recognizing me, like, oh, I see you, dude. You know what I mean? Like that was a very freaky thing to read that and think back to that moment.
Yeah.
It was really
deep, like instinctual stuff. Yeah, totally.
That was so well read, Bijan. Thank you so much for that.
Yes,
was such a pleasant surprise. It was amazing. It was amazing. Thank you. Was there anything else you wanted to say, Bijan? I want to make sure I didn't cut you off.
No, those were the main points, and just appreciating everyone that's here.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate you. All right. There's one Reddit question that I picked out for today, and it's going to touch on the last point that I was going to bring up about ADHD, mental health stuff in relationships. So let's dive in, and I would love Paulie's opinion on this one because it's a little bit what we don't expect. So I won't give it away anymore. I'll just read it.
hit me with it.
Yeah, let's go. Okay, so 27-year-old male, 25-year-old female. The title is My Girlfriend Has Begun Blaming Everything on ADHD Ever Since Her Diagnosis. And we have some solid background on this one. So it says, I have been dating my girlfriend, who we'll call Maria, for 3 years. Maria was diagnosed with ADHD just over a year and a half ago. Maria has always been unorganized and forgetful, but in the past year, it's become much worse. We used to divide up the chores half and half, and we'd take in turns to cook every day. Now she has stopped doing all of her own chores, and 90% of her days to cook, she says she's too tired or has a headache or doesn't feel like it. She constantly stands up to me or is hours late when we make arrangements to meet anywhere. She interrupts me nonstop. I've started having to communicate in sentences that are 4 words or less, because after that point, she will interrupt me and start talking over me. She loses basically every gift I get her. Okay, so what have you done about this? Is what you're probably saying right now. I have tried to talk to her about this many times. Every time I try, she says it's the ADHD. For example, I brought up that I find it frustrating to be constantly interrupted. She says, "Well, I know what you're planning to say," so I react. I said half the time the thing she thinks I'm going to say is not what I'm actually going to say, but she doesn't know that because I only get 4 or 5 words out before she's talking over me. She said, I can't help it. I have ADHD. If I don't interrupt, I'll lose my train of thought. And I said, so you're saying that you should get to interrupt me and I can't have a problem with it? She said, yes. I said she needs to make more of an effort to do the chores and cook dinner on her days. I don't mind taking over sometimes when she's sick or tired because we're a team and we support each other. But it's got to the point where she cooks maybe once or twice a month and the rest of the time she stalls until 9 p.m. and then says she's too tired and I have to microwave something for us. She says she has ADHD and can't be expected to plan ahead. I've tried suggesting workarounds, timers, alarms on her phone, apps, ADHD focus therapy. She shoots down everything that says It won't work, and I don't understand because I don't have ADHD. I don't know what to do. I want to be supportive, but she won't meet me halfway. She won't even try. She just expects me to treat she just expects to treat me like SHIT and get away with it because she has ADHD. Is there any way I can get through to her? So the summary is girlfriend was diagnosed with ADHD a year and a half ago. She now blames all her behavior on ADHD and refuses to try and fix it.
This is tough. Like,
There's a lot.
I want to have
Okay.
empathy for her, and so does he, I guess. But man,
So there's a lot there. First, I want to mention, because she's 24. Women are typically diagnosed with ADHD later than men. So I'm not surprised that she was diagnosed in her mid-20s. ADHD brains also develop a lot of these skills at a much slower rate than people. They say actually ADHD people don't really get to the same level of a 20, 25-year-old person until they're in their mid-30s. I'm 36. Coincidence? I don't think so. So while I do agree with her that the things she's experiencing are a part of her ADHD, she's also showing that a lack of accountability for it, which is definitely frustrating. And I think a lot of guys might say women do that, but I'm not going to say that because that would sound really terrible.
overgeneralized.
Overgeneralized, not fair, not going to do it. But yeah, this is a tough one because she's not.
You still want to help her, right? You still want to like get her over the thing, or like just get her past the thing, or like
yes,
be accountable. Yeah.
But as someone with ADHD, we've talked about it. You need to be the one to do the work, right? So an ADHD person, the reason that part of it is we look for dopamine hits, right? And part of that is if the consequences for something aren't dire, we don't worry about it. Like, I've known about this space for over a week. I didn't get myself to start really prepping for it till today. That's just how we operate. It's unfortunate, but I knew that if I didn't prepare, it would be terrible, right? So ADHD people need to have the threat of consequences. Or consequences will not matter. That's why people with ADHD are so bad at planning. That's why they forget things. That's why they'll be flaky. They see the shiny red ball over here and they're like, well, yeah, I could have done that, but that looks cool over here, right? So, and it's not okay. It's just kind of how they operate. So really, it's on her more than him, for sure. Like, I think as an ADHD person, I try my best not to put the burden on others, right? It's my responsibility to be in charge of me. I understand the challenges that come with it too, so I do understand, but I think she's definitely being unfair about it. And, he should. It actually probably would be better for her if he established more firm boundaries with her. Whether she's actually willing to accept those or not, that's an entirely different discussion, right? But doctors I've heard say actually ADHD people do much better with more boundaries and more reinforcement. But obviously it depends on the individual, like anything. If she's not willing to accept those boundaries, she's going to end up by herself and she's going to be doing all those things she's avoiding anyways. So, and then she's probably going to be like I talked about earlier, focusing on what he did wrong and not on her. That's, man, it's complex.
I love that. Well done. Well done. That is a really, really good answer to this question and exactly what I wanted you to touch on. And that's why I picked it. So the last point I wanted to make on this is, if you get with someone who has ADHD or any other mental health issues or someone who's just the normalest person who has a behavior you don't like, this applies to every single person. If someone's not willing to grow or improve and take accountability in any relationship, you're going to say, hey, you did this behavior. It upset me. This is what I need from you to feel loved. If someone automatically goes into defense mode, just attacks you and doesn't take on board any negative feedback to improve, your relationship is not in a healthy place, and it's just kind of going to get worse and worse because this is the core part of how relationships improve. So mental health issues are no exception to this, and so that's why I wanted to bring up this point that we have a lot of similarities. Yes, and there's also differences that we can put boundaries, put reinforcers, shape, and tiny little steps. But like Paulie said, if a person for any reason is not willing to acknowledge or improve at all, it's not something we can do for them. They have to be able to do it themselves. And we want to be with someone who is willing to grow and learn just like we are, even if it takes slower. Like if someone loves you and they understand
the
it.
runaway response is the good response here. It's okay. I don't have to feel bad about it. Like, run away is what I want to tell that guy.
Yeah, if she's really not budging. But the thing is, what I find really interesting in this story is before a year and a half ago, she actually could do half the chores and she could do half the cooking and things like that. And she used to not have this I have ADHD reason. I'm sure it was much harder for her to do these chores and these things. But we got to be very careful with diagnoses. It's so easy to blame a diagnosis for all of our behaviors and feel like we don't have to change at all because of it. And that's not the case. I think Paulie took the best version of kind of what science has found. He educated himself. He became really knowledgeable. He understood himself. He, confronted himself, faced all the hardship, went through it, and it surrounded himself with way more good people with healthy relationships, all that. And he hasn't used ADHD as a crutch. Like he took Paulie, I think cuts himself a bit short. Like since last week, where I think it was in the last week and a half where we said we'll have Paulie on. He's taken so many steps to make sure he was prepared today. I think more than the average person, he's actually done that. Honestly, I was really impressed. I felt like I needed to step up, like, on my end, because I felt like you were really organized and really structured. You were so thoughtful, and even more than an average person would. So I was really impressed with just how much initiative you put in. And I think actually the standard is that people would kind of make up something on the fly on the last day. And, we were going back and forth all week that you were putting effort in. So I think you were putting even more effort in than the average person. And growth is such an attractive thing to me and to, people that value it. And so my question that you ended up answering was why you kind of why it ended with the person that you thought was the one. And then you explained it in the last 20 minutes or so. And I think, if it also seemed like she wasn't really open to growing or like facing things. And so I think there's someone even better in store for you. And I know you're still processing this one, but honestly, when you meet the next person that like is willing to grow, like, and cares about you and can make you feel so safe and trusted and loved and like feel like you can be yourself, you're going to your mind is going to be blown with how amazing life can be and how amazing relationships can be. So I'm so excited for you to meet that person, and I'm glad to hear that you're open for it. And if they cross your way, you're not gonna let a 10 out of 10 pass you by. You're gonna jump on it, so that makes me happy. And I think we learned so much today, including myself. I know at one point, Mr. Magic Man, you had your hand up, but was there something that you still wanted to say?
It's all right. I'm happy to close it off for today. It's getting a bit late.
Okay, got you. Awesome. Omid, I just want to double check on your end. You had everything covered.
I still got something to say.
Okay.
If no one else has anything to say.
Okay.
Beyond is still offended by the situation, I think.
I'm so sorry. Okay, guys. Okay, let's go with Omid and then let's go with Bijan. Omid, what have you got?
No. Go with Bijan first.
Okay, Bijan.
All right, so I feel really bad for this guy, but I think he kind of put himself in the situation. I think there's like two main factors here. The first factor is understanding yourself, understanding your deal breakers, and understanding what you are and aren't willing to compromise on. It turns out that very sadly, in relationships, you have to compromise. And I know that is heartbreaking to hear because you want a perfect relationship where everything happens exactly the way you want it to be. But it's true that you do have to compromise. And I think, it's one of the most important qualities to be able to understand where your boundaries are and where your lines are. And so in this case, this guy is basically complaining and not really providing any sort of a framework for a solution that he's been trying to build. He just says, could you do this? Could you do that? Without creating any sort of structure. It doesn't seem like he had any sort of real conversation about his boundaries. So I think he just is handling the situation really poorly and not holding her accountable, right? So that's one of the things that I find an issue with a lot of these things where guys are like, oh, women don't have any accountability, this and that. It turns out that in a healthy relationship, you help your partner with accountability because we're all people and we're all human. We all struggle with that. And he needs to be more confrontational if these issues are really causing him a lot of grief. Like Kimia mentioned earlier, some people can handle partners that have, mental issues or physical issues, and some people can't. And you might be one of the people that can, and this is something that you're fine with, or you might not be. I think in the previous relationship, when I was still learning the ropes, my partner told me that I wasn't doing very well with communication and was really hurting her feelings. And I was very straight up about like, hey, look, this is important to me. I'm going to work on it. And I'm going to check in with you every week to talk specifically about the progress that I'm making. But I wouldn't blame you for breaking up with me over this because I can tell that this is bothering you. And like, it doesn't seem like they've had that conversation in any capacity. And I mean, it's just a complete lack of structure. So they're really lacking addressing this properly. But I mean, the guy's going to learn about himself, right? These are the kind of hardships where you actually figure out what you are and aren't willing to tolerate. In general, It feels like a situation where there's so much that they could do, and yeah, he's just complaining and not doing anything. So L relationship, they can definitely make it better.
Yeah, they're both in their mid-20s, so I'm not shocked that he hasn't figured that out yet. Yeah, no, you touched on a good point about, accountability with women. I think a feminine woman, when she finds the type of masculine man that actually makes her feel comfortable with being in her feminine, you get a very different person, right? And I think we see a lot with society now where we've kind of demonized masculinity as a whole and not just demonized, like, toxic people, which has kind of caused, I think, women to look at men and feel like maybe they can't feel safe in our society, which has forced women to maybe at times take on more masculine roles. And it's created a big imbalance, and it's a weird fine line we're trying to sort out, and we're seeing a lot of negative things in society that are coming from it. I think personally. So part of this journey I've been on is, okay, I recognize that I learned at a young age to not be a good masculine man. I got to be honest with myself. I don't exhibit the type of strong masculine qualities that a woman would want. So what exactly am I upset about for not finding that woman? Right? Like, am I offering what the woman that I want would want? No. So it's on me to learn how to be the person that would attract the person I want. Right? I don't think we do that. I think that's why discussions like this are really important, because we don't talk about these things. We talk about what we see and what we feel, and not about why we feel and why we see what we see and why we do what we do. Right? Um, there's a lot to this. We're not going to solve it all in one conversation. There's only 16 of us here. We're not fixing everything. But if the more conversations we can have like this, where we're all taking something from it, and we can, bring that out into the world, into other conversations, and, starts spreading, like, we can start to see some changes. But without being honest with ourselves, without having these sort of discussions, the bad stuff's only going to keep getting worse, and the good's going to keep losing.
Let's go, Paulie. Inspiring.
Let's go.
Amazing. Love that, Bijan. Love that, Paulie. Omid, what did you want to say? This is your moment.
Shifted forward. No. For me, like this is an open close kind of case. It's very clinical, because it feels like it's either they both didn't talk to each other about what they really wanted, or like they kind of checked out of the relationship at different times. Because like they clearly both have something that they want, and just because they're not confronting it with each other doesn't really mean that, like, stuff.
Yeah, agreed. And a very alarming thing is this has been going on for a year and a half. Like, I feel like, in Armin and I's marriage, like, if something even happens like a day or a week or something, like, we're on top of that. Like, we do not let things slide. Like, this is wrong. Usually it's like within 24 hours. But if there's a pattern, like, we jump on it. Like, if you're experiencing something for like weeks or months, or like, let alone years, like, please, like, take this stuff seriously. Do not throw it under the rug if you don't have the resource, like the knowledge on how to approach it. Find people that have the knowledge, or books, or I don't know, the right YouTube videos, or like myself, like anything that you can find that can increase your knowledge to tackle it, please do. Yeah, no, I agree with you, Omid. Omid, was there anything you wanted to say to Paulie about everything Paulie has said so far? I think like you got cut off a little bit at one point.
All right, my question to Paulie is: does Paulie have any questions for me? This is a space with equality, balance, scales, and all of those things. I asked him a question, and now he can bounce back and ask me one if he wishes to do so.
The honor, Paulie, to ask.
Oh man, my ADHD brain was not ready for that question.
We tried to switch it up.
You know what? I might have to think about that. Maybe next week. I'll hit you with it. I'm gonna need some time to think about it. I'm still trying to like my brain is like, after this whole hour and a half discussion, now my brain's in that weird little like recovery mode. That the tank is starting to empty out. If you hear anyone with ADHD talk about emptying out the tank, that's an interesting thing to learn about.
Thank you. And it's so good that you shared that. You showed awareness of like knowing where you're at with your body right now and your mind, and you shared that with us. So I think that's a skill in itself we can all learn and practice as well. Awesome. We're going to wrap up today with the MVFP of the night, the most valuable floor member. Obviously, it's Paulie for sharing everything that he did. If we had to pick a non-co-host today, it was Bijan just whipping out casually this amazing passage on command that was super relevant to today's discussion. That was amazing. Really also a highlight. So Paulie, thank you again. I'll give you a few moments to say anything you want to the floor, but on my end, I just wanted to thank everyone for being here. Paulie, you exceeded my expectations, and you're always welcome here whenever you wish. These are such important, deep topics for us to cover. They're so valuable. Everyone here appreciates deep conversations. We don't have them enough. So this is a place that we can have them every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard. So thank you. Just thank you on my end. And Paulie, I'll let you close off.
Yeah, great pull, Bijan, on the Nietzsche. That was fantastic. I want to say a thank you for allowing us to have this conversation and opening the floor for me to kind of unload. I don't know who it was better for, me or anyone else in the crowd, but it was good for me. I can say that. I also want to say thank you to you guys in the crowd that listened. I got a lot of friends in the audience right now. Rod, Airworthy, E, Mazza actually just came. He started hosting his own mental health spaces where it's about addiction. It's really cool to see he popped in after. I don't know if his spaces are recorded, but if they are, I highly recommend checking those out. It's just, yeah, I think it's really important to utilize community, right? I think I tried to touch on it a little bit early on about how community is part of why we were able to rise to the top of the food chain, right? And it's at our core, connecting with people is so critical to who we are and our growth, and who we want to become. No one did everything on their own. You got to have people in your corner. You got to have people that support you. And if you don't put yourself out there and show what you're all about, you're not going to be able to really make those kind of positive, meaningful connections that these kind of conversations can bring. So I'm looking forward. I plan on coming back every week. I think you could see that, but I try to talk whenever I can on these spaces. I can't help it. I love I love what you're doing here, and I think it's really important, and I'm just loving this. Thank you guys so much, and yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Have an amazing rest of your night, and I wish you all the love lives of your dreams, and we'll catch you next week, same time. Bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thanks so much. Thank you, Kimia. You're amazing, as always. Thanks for helping us set up this space. It was great.
Much love, everyone.